Voters in Virginia, South Carolina, Maine, Nevada, and North Dakota cast their ballots in primary elections Tuesday. Democrats are hoping to turn seats in some of those states blue this year as part of their push to take back the House. But some party leaders are looking past 2018 to 2020. Several potential presidential contenders gathered at the We the People Summit in Washington Wednesday. It's organized by more than a dozen national progressive organizations. CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe was at the summit. He asked some potential candidates what it means to be a Democrat now.
We believe that government ought to work not just for the rich and the powerful. We think government ought to work for everyone. The Republicans gave us their view of how government ought to work. They gave away $1.5 trillion to giant corporations and billionaires.
Everything's going up right now, but people's wages are not reflecting that, and people are struggling. And we've got to be folk, whether you're a Democrat, I'm talking about Democratic folk, candidates that speak to that pain point and let people know that there is a pathway for this country not to do what we're doing now, which is we're making incredibly rich corporations incredibly richer.
One of the biggest issues in New York is we believe that health care is a right, not a privilege. We believe that every child in America should have the opportunity to succeed, regardless of where you're from, what block you grew up on. And so these core values of making sure that everyone can have a job if they want to work hard and earn their way into the middle class. And so that's what my campaign's about. That's certainly what a lot of campaigns around the country are about. It's just fighting for regular people who need voices in Washington.
I think Democrats need to speak truth and not be afraid to do it. And the truth about everything from what is happening and not happening with the economy, such as wages, being stagnant while the cost of living is going up in almost every community. We need to be talking truth about where we stand in terms of the policies coming out of this administration as it relates to, for example, national security, and not appreciating the fact that we should value muscular diplomacy as much as we value the strong man. There is the work that folks need to do about just getting people out to vote and reminding them that elections matter and that there is so much at stake.
And Ed O'Keefe joins me now from Washington. All right, so Ed, did any of these messages seem to stick at this summit?
Any discussion of raising the minimum wage, preserving health care, pushing for union rights, pushing for minorities who liberals and Democrats believe are being basically singled out by the president. All of that resonates very well in a room full of union activists and progressive leaders who are responsible for whipping up support across the country and turning out votes for Democratic voters.
Well, immigration, of course, has emerged as a key issue this year. Here's what Senator Kamala Harris said about the Trump administration's family separation policy.
I've been asking questions for at least over a year of then Secretary Kelly, Acting Secretary Duke, current Secretary Nielsen, and they are not giving us clear answers. They are not giving us answers about the number of kids that are being picked up. They're not giving us answers about the protocols and procedures by which they determine how to separate a child from their parent. Children as young as under 4 years old. They're not giving us any clear indication of the average length of time that those families are separated and what is the standard by which they will reunify the families. And this is very real stuff. I mean, there was a man who just committed suicide after his child was ripped from his arms. And this administration is clearly not sympathetic to the trauma that is caused to a child and a parent when those families are forcefully separated.
So, Ed, how much did immigration come up on Wednesday?
Oh, came up a lot, not only during Harris's exchange with the audience, but when others were asked about it. Another Democrat who was there that people should keep an eye on is Congressman Luis Gutiérrez of Chicago, of course, an outspoken immigration or critic of President Trump's immigration policies, and frankly was a tough critic of President Obama's immigration policies. Talked a lot about the concern about separating families at the border and his plans to sort of continue to highlight that and get the 8 million or so people who are in the country and eligible to become U.S. citizens actually to become citizens and then get them registered to vote, so that the concerns of immigrants are better heard at the ballot box in the future. Gutierrez also said that he plans to focus a lot on mobilizing, registering, and turning out people who've been displaced by the hurricanes in Puerto Rico and now live in Florida and Pennsylvania and other parts of the country, saying that those votes, while they're on the mainland at least, certainly could be critical to Democratic successes, especially in some states where the Puerto Rican population isn't booming like in Florida or New York, but is growing and growing in such a way that it could actually make a difference in some local and federal elections.
Well, you also asked these senators about the record number of women running for office and actually being nominated. Here's some of what they said.
Women are off the sidelines and in the fight. They're running for office. They're helping people who are running for office. They're energized, and they're going to make sure their voices are heard in Washington, in state houses, all across this country.
I think the election of Donald Trump really unleashed something in Americans all across this country, a desire to protect their values, to protect their communities, to defend what's right in this country. And for a lot of women, they have decided to be the ones in the gauntlet, to actually be the ones that stand up and fight with every fiber of their being for what they believe in.
I think in this time of sort of an assault on the virtues of this country, this time where you hear kind of words, sexist, misogynistic words being spouted from the highest offices in the land, I think that we are a nation that have a comeuppance, and this is women not only saying that I'm going to be there in every other kind of role, but I'm going to be one of the leaders.
So many of the women nominated in races this year are Democrats. What's the significance of that, Ed?
Well, it speaks to the energy and the enthusiasm among women, especially across the country. We're seeing records shattered in all sorts of ways, no matter how you slice it. Growing percentages of Democratic congressional candidates this year are set to be women. More than 360 women registered to run for Congress as Democrats across the country this year. That's more, it's certainly higher than 2016. In fact, the numbers are still so fluid it's hard to exactly calculate how they compare, but we know they're far greater than they were in 2016. And look, you asked Gillibrand, you asked Senator Harris especially why you think this is happening, and they make very clear this has a lot to do with Donald Trump, personally and from a policy standpoint. They just finally feel that after years perhaps of putting up with Republican policies or men, frankly, like Donald Trump, they just finally decided it's time to get up and not only vote and not only march, but also to register to run. And we're seeing consistently across the country women winning Democratic primaries. Look at Virginia just last night. In the 4 sort of critical and competitive congressional races in the state, Democrats have nominated women in each instance. Out in Nevada, Jacky Rosen will challenge Dean Heller for probably the most competitive Senate seat, one of the most competitive Senate seats in the country, and certainly the one that Democrats have the best chance to pick up in November. So evidence all across the country. Gillibrand and Warren do a lot of work with women across the country, getting them to run, and they're quite pleased with what they're seeing this year.
All right, Ed O'Keefe in Washington for us. Ed, always good to have you. Thank you.
Take care.